This is Philip Harvey of Nat Creole Projects here on behalf of Violence Transformed. I want to thank you for joining us for a series of up-close looks at the In the Time of COVID-19 series. It's a virtual exhibition series of multimedia art produced by Violence Transformed. The virtual exhibition series features artists whose work contemplates the social and or personal consequences of a pandemic, whether the pathogen be of physical, the COVID-19 virus, for example, or of social, for example, police brutality among people of color, origin. Today, I am pleased to be joined by the co-curators of In the Time of COVID-19, Hakim Raquib and Walter Crump. Now, Hakim Raquib is the owner and operator of the Hakim Photography Studio, a linchpin of the Boston creative community. Hakim's work has appeared across a multitude of platforms, including the Museum of Fine Arts and the Boston Globe magazine. Hakim is also a master resident artist in the African American Masters Artist in Residence program at Northeastern University, which we fondly call AMARP. Walter Crump is a Fulbright Fellow, trained as a painter and printmaker that has also become renowned for his photography work. His work is in numerous collections, including the Boston Althanium Fogg Art Museum of Harvard University, the Danforth Museum, and the Boston Public Library. I want to thank both of you for joining us today, Walter and Hakim. We are very, very pleased to have you join us and talk about what I truly believe is a very important and inventive series. How are you guys doing today? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to start by asking the both of you, Walter and Hakim. You both have very interesting careers, long sustained careers, but interesting in the sense that both of you are quite dynamic in your approaches to your work. It makes me think, first of all, how did you guys approach this series in terms of curating the series? What was each of your kind of thinking behind the way that you were going to put together or approach the artist or that such? I'd like to start off with you, Walter. What was your thinking when you got the call to be a co-curator of this series?
Well, Mary Harvey is a good friend, and she paired Hakim and I up. She thought we'd be great together working on this. And so I've been thinking a lot about the meaning of art and what it does with a reviewer and what a viewer sees and what lasts. And if anything, when he or she comes away from viewing an image, what do they remember? If an image is about social issues, what causes us to be moved by it? To me, the image should, before anything, surprise us, captivate us aesthetically, draw us in. Riding on that surprise will be the context, which could be anything from a scream to a whisper in terms of content. I see a lot of documentary work these days that acts as a footnote to the text. I think it should be the other way around. When looking at any of artists' work that we show, the images stand for themselves. Their commentary helps put things in context, but experiencing their work is what really moves and informs me.
I see. How about you, Hakim? What kind of drove you or drove your thinking?
Well, I've worked with Violence Transformed and its platform as a social artist, looking at some of the issues of humanity and the crises that we're in particular today, brought me to, as a co-curator for Violence Transformation, having exhibited one of the first ones online. It was during the George Floyd crisis. His assassination really changed my perspective on what we were really dealing with in America, and opened up not only the issue of two pandemics, that is the racist pandemic that we were dealing with, but the actual COVID violence. So the time in the COVID is actually the platform in which I started looking at other artists' work. But there's a lot more in terms of that with the individual artists that I was seeking and presenting at the same time, what their social consciousness was in terms of how they felt about participation in some of the issues that they were facing historically. Because at this point in time, the social issues are crossing boundaries like no other. It's a global situation. And the pandemic was global. The racist reaction to racism by people was global. So I look at the platform as one to bring light to justice, or at least to bring to the viewer an understanding of the situation that they're arrived at through the absence of participation themselves. So I think by Violence Transform bringing this exposes not only the artists' multitudes of talents who have not been exposed in some cases, but are also vintage artists and have a lot to say, should be exposed. But mainly their consciousness is important. So I approach it from that perspective when I look at an artist's body of work. Quality is subjective, but the structure in composition is basic and universal, and I hope artists have that. But I'm very concerned about that content.
Yes, sure. Do you find that after so many years of innovating within your craft and between your particular crafts, do you find this kind of marriage of the digital technology and showing, presenting the work of other artists, is there a particular challenge in doing so and using a virtual styled exhibition platform rather than a tactile experience for the viewer? Do you think anything is perhaps lost in that translation? Hakim, I'll start with you first.
Oh, sure, there's a lot. The tactile is lost. Mm-hmm. But yet the visual platform that is a virtual platform is excellent, though, at this time, because people are still able to enjoy in the work. Yes. And that's the most important thing, that we keep moving forward and not stop and let this pandemic lock us in so that we don't communicate or expand our voices. We have a lot to say. It's a constant, and art is always being created. And that's the whole hope that Violence Transformation has, is to bring it forward. I think the visual platform is excellent at this time. I mean, that is a virtual platform. I have no problems with it. After working with computers for over 20 years now, I'm comfortable with it. There are a lot of artists that still have a bit of illiteracy in working with the medium. I use that word, loosely, but that is, they're not fully equipped. So the work that we have to do is not only to edit the work, but also bring them up to scale in some ways. But not all artists, but some. So there is an ease, and then there's a little bit of work that has to go through, But sure. I enjoy seeing the work as it is. But man, do I miss the tactile, seeing the real work coming in and looking at it. There's nothing like seeing the work. Sure. You lose a lot because of resolution, screen resolutions, depends on the viewer who's looking at it, the format, the profiles of color. There are a lot of little elements that weaken and the work sometimes. But tactile, the physical, you can't replace that. Essentially, that's my feeling. But the digital platform is excellent at this time. It's useful, very useful to continue the dialogue, to communicate with each other. And the viewer gets to see and not stop viewing work.
Absolutely. Walter, do you feel you are such an inventive artist? You have moved through kinds of genres of art and mastered all of them. Do you see this as a particularly welcoming way to present the work of artists?
Well, I think it's welcoming and frustrating. I think because of Facebook and Instagram and places like that, that people are very used to seeing work online, and it encourages sort of accepting that. And I think that works very well. The problem, I think, also is that you pass by it briefly. Even if you're looking at something like our website, people will go through it very quickly and then walk away onto something else. And when you go to a show, you remember that whole experience much more.
Yes.
You know, one of the things I think is missing with virtual imagery, especially in painting and printmaking and those elements, is the surface. You know, the tactile surface, the quality of the surface, which can play an awful lot in a work of art, and you just don't see that. So, you know, I think virtual exhibitions and stuff are great because we can reach so many more people and involve so many more people, and also show a lot more artists that way. But you know, like a show, it's up and down, and then it's gone. But with this website and many other places, there are archives, so you can go back to and experience the work, which I think is very good. But I worry about the sort of brief time that people spend looking at work. I had one of my students was a guard at the museum, and to entertain himself, he would count the amount of seconds that people spent on artwork. And it was, you know, it was 15 to 20 seconds or something like that for the most part. You know, so some people it's been a lot longer. And
that's good
you know,
data.
with visual, it's even faster, you know, 5 seconds, 6 seconds and stuff. And I would love to find some way that, you know, art becomes a kind of meditation where you can spend time really viewing it, and you not feel rushed to go to the next image or go to the next big thing.
Sure. Well, both of you have chosen excellent artists thus far. Can you tell us, can you choose one artist and tell us why it was important to include this artist? I'll let you choose which artist that we've actually seen in a time of COVID-19 series so far. And Hakim, I'd like to start with you. Which artist kind of comes to mind that you'd like to tell us why it was important for them?
Yeah, they all are very.
Yeah, I know I'm
not fair.
I know I'm asking you to choose one. That's not particularly fair. But
and some of them are my colleagues in AMARP, the African American Masters Artist Residence Program, and you know, I think that the documentation of this process, I mean, it's so important, you know, because it's a historical moment that we're living in. I mean, definitely a global historical one. We're all sharing this. And the artists that are presented all have basically dealt with some of the social problems that we have been faced with over the century. I mean, really. But one artist in particular, Shea Justice, he's a draftsman and he paints as well. And he's mixed media artist. And his work is pretty powerful because he goes into most of his themes in social justice. And there's a lot of parody in his work. And I know Shea personally. He's also an educator. And he seeks to make these transitions and to teach through his narratives and his work. He's also an excellent writer as well. So his work always comes to mind. And then there's another artist that I love. Her name is Susan Thompson. She's also one of my colleagues. And her work is very powerful. She's a quilt artist. She works in fabric, but she also works in other mediums like wax, acoustic. And her work is very much within the African diaspora. And her presence is large and bold and colorful, and beauty is infused in her work. Her work makes you feel wonderful about being who you are. So her identity is solid there in her work, and it's very intricate, And she's an amazing person, I think, as well. And she's been an artist most of her adult life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now there's another photographer, and of course both of you are well versed in that medium. John Lowenstein, who is also part of the series. Walter, what do you see when you're looking at John's work?
As I said before, I look at a lot of documentary work, and there are a few people who stand out. That you, each image is a powerful image. I mean, he obviously photographs tons and tons of photographs, but his selection process is really fascinating because they all tell a story. They're all powerfully present, and they take your breath away in a way. The fact that he works on a project for over many, many years, he gets to know the people he's photographing and documenting. So he's very involved in what he's doing, and that to me makes the work even more powerful. And you don't have to read anything about what he's about in order to be moved and maybe I should say educated by his work. It just stands on its own. So I find that really, really impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. That's the consciousness.
Yeah.
It's just so involved in his work. And you sense that. Yeah. I love John's work, incidentally. Well.
Yeah. Fantastic.
He broke his leg, I think, and he couldn't wait to get. He was in Canada had to stay in Canada for a while. And really.
Pandemic, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next in the series as we move forward with the In the Time of COVID-19 series? What's next? What can audiences expect? Walter, maybe I'll start with you. I know we've had a few conversations.
Can you say it again? My phone started ringing.
No problem. What can we expect in the future of the series? I know there's more to come, and I would like if you could tell us who's coming next.
I think Hakim can probably talk about that. I don't know Carlos, and I think Hakim does know Carlos. If you want to say, but we've gone over his work. He's a documentary photographer as well, and he's also an incredible draftsman. And I just was, it was really hard to edit his work because he sent us tons and tons of stuff. But it was hard when it got to his drawings. It was really hard to eliminate almost anything he did. I'll let Hakim pick up from there.
Yeah. Okay. Hakim, what do you think?
Carlos Byron, he's an interesting artist, and I've known him for some time. He lives here in Roxbury, and he hails from New York City, but he moved here and started working. He's also an educator, a teacher, and he's, I think, retired now from that practice. But the thing about Carlos's work is as Rusty mentioned, he's a draftsman, and he also does caricature, and he's a great calligraphy artist as well. His photography is community-based. Not just his community, but other communities that he enters. He photographs Massachusetts and communities throughout Massachusetts. And I think that's an interesting take. He doesn't stay home, but his energy is that of the humanity again, and his consciousness to portray the sameness of people's plight across borders, or in this case, communities. We all have similar likenesses that we share. And I think he wants to point that out in his work a lot. Then there's the artistic part of his work where he loves the light and the shadow and how he plays and interplays with light. But recently, he has been going back and forth within the last couple of years to Cuba and doing these fantastic images from rooftops in Havana. I mean, the compositions are amazing as well. I think his work is a sample of an artist in transition. He is a photographer, but he's also a painter. He's also a draftsman. I mean, see, the term Renaissance might apply to him as well, like Rusty in his work. But
and Hakim as well.
This is actually what his work is, and there's only a small amount. There are only 33 images in the body of portfolio out of maybe what we looked at, maybe God, I think it was 80 something works, and we had to edit that work, and that was tough. It took us about 3 weeks. I mean, it was really tough. Yeah. Because all of them were great, and trying to give a concise thread to his work was the toughest curation I think we've had so far. But I think successfully we worked it out. We worked it out successfully. Yeah. But Carlos is an interesting artist, and his narrative is also to be read, because there is a Q&A with him. And his artist statement around his work in his time in the pandemic is also worth reading and looking into how an artist explores, his situation and working from the periphery a lot. When you're dealing with a pandemic, you can't go inside, and usually that's what an artist wants to do. Is a photographer, a journalist, they want to get inside, but it's hard to do that. So you're kind of on the peripheral, but it's possible. Of course, it's been done to do excellent work during this time. I myself don't go out very much, but I have a telephoto.
I've seen some of your photographs outside. They're pretty interesting there.
He's also, I think he's been hanging out, or he was hanging out with dancers and performers, and that's a significant part of his work, I believe.
I see. Well, fantastic. And I'd also like to add that Walter and Hakim are also featured in the Time of COVID-19 series. It's absolutely fantastic. I want to thank both of you for the work you've done on the series, and also for joining us here to talk with our audience for a few moments about it. We want to please entreat you to visit violencetransformed.org and catch up on the series. It's been a lot of great artists we've seen so far, and more to come. Thank you very much. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Hakim, for joining us.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Take care now.